So, Sackboy launched on PC last week. Did you know that? Because I didn't know that. Sony's handling of the Sackboy PC port was almost hilariously bad. I don't think I've seen a studio pick a worse release date since the time EA decided to launch Titanfall 2 in between Battlefield 1 and Infinite Warfare. Sackboy launched on PC 2 weeks after Uncharted's PC port, a week after Persona's PC ports, and the same exact day as Modern Warfare 2. On top of that, they barely advertised this thing at all, and I wouldn't be surprised if you seeing this video right now is the first you're even hearing about this. This launch was so poorly handled that it's almost impressive, and while most people in the discourse have realized this, I've noticed that a rather sizable number of people are trying to use this as evidence of the PC's shortcomings. Somehow. I don't know how you can look at Sackboy's PC launch and even slightly believe it had a fair shot at success, but that's also besides the fact that this game didn't exactly fly off the shelves on PlayStation either. This wasn't a God of War or Spider-Man level PlayStation game, it was a Little Big Planet PlayStation game. And a spin-off, nonetheless. There's a reason Sony stopped even acknowledging this franchise's existence, and yet this video is going to be dedicated to the people I saw trying to use Sackboy's poor PC sales as evidence that Sony should stop releasing games on the PC altogether. Look, you guys didn't buy this thing either, but the major difference is when you didn't buy it on PlayStation, it wasn't competing with Uncharted, Persona, and fucking Modern Warfare 2.
What's your excuse?
Sony is 100% to blame for Sackboy's poor performance on the PC, but there are plenty of people who want you to think otherwise. So let's make fun of them.
Shall we?
Sackboy is a brilliant game that Sony should have kept exclusive to PS5. We liked it and played it a lot. Sony, no more AAA PlayStation games for PC. You are killing them by throwing them to these pirates. Matey. I saw a decent number of people saying things like this, suggesting that Sackboy is a big seller on PlayStation, but like,
Is he though?
while the original Little Big Planet sold rather well, the sequels never really hit the same commercial success as other Sony platforming franchises. These are the total franchise sales according to data compiled by YouTuber I don't know how to pronounce it, but link in the description to this video. And while I'll never deny that these are actually solid numbers, they're nowhere near the other Sony franchises. This chart also doesn't include Sackboy, the game we're talking about right now, which is believed to have sold very poorly. Given the fact that it's 2022, exact numbers are hard to come by, but by all available measures, Sackboy was not a great seller on PlayStation, by any stretch of the imagination. So it's a little strange for the PlayStation community to come at the PC community for not buying the game that they weren't really buying either. Like, at least the PlayStation version actually got some decent marketing. Most PC players were completely in the dark on this one. PC gamers want console exclusives ported to PC, but when they are, they don't buy them. Oh, Last of Us profile picture alert. Opinion immediately docked 5 points. But it's kind of hard for PC gamers to buy games when we don't know about them. Also, kind of weird for you to expect PC gamers to buy games when you didn't really buy them either. And in case you are not aware, PC gamers absolutely do buy console ports, especially if Sony games. Every other Sony port has done really well on Steam, but I'll get into the specifics of that in a minute. PC gamers not buying this one PlayStation port that was barely marketed and wasn't a very hype release in the first place isn't really indicative of anything more than just a botched launch, and a game that wasn't marketed great in the first place. Also, Sackboy launched for $60 on Steam, but almost every other Sony game has launched at $50. So like, what the fuck happened here? Uncharted literally came out a week before Sackboy for $10 less. And that was 2 games. The Uncharted PC port was Uncharted 4 and Uncharted Legacy of Thieves. I think that's the name of that game. But that collection came out for $50. And then a week later, Sackboy comes out for $60? Like, are you kidding me? The only other $60 Sony port on PC was Spider-Man, and I'm pretty confident in saying that game has way more content than Sackboy. But God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted, Days Gone, these are all way cheaper than Sackboy. Sony seriously phoned this port in, and it's honestly amazing how poorly they handled this. Sackboy's underperformance on PC is entirely Sony's fault, nobody else's. First Uncharted 4, now this one. Congratulations for damaging your brand for pretty much nothing, LMAO. This is kind of a weird point. Uncharted 4 didn't sell amazing on PC either, but it had its own fair share of problems, once again because of Sony's lack of effort recently. And I don't mean to sound like I'm making excuses for games that sell poorly on PC, or, I don't mean to sound like I'm just trying to explain away any poor selling Sony title, but when you look at the track record here, can you really blame me? Literally every first-party Sony game to come to PC so far has sold very well. Spider-Man, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Death Stranding have all sold fantastically, and even the less popular ports like Days Gone and Detroit Become Human have been doing very well. Days Gone has been doing way better on PC than I thought it was. Uncharted's PC launch wasn't quite as awful as Sackboy's, but it was, again, barely marketed by Sony. And you also have to consider the fact that it was Uncharted 4, dropping on PC without any official access to the first 3 games on the platform. Still waiting on an actual explanation on that one, Sony, or Naughty Dog, or whoever's bright idea that was. And before you say something like, oh, but Uncharted 1 through 3 can't be ported because something PS3 engine. If a fan-made PS3 emulator can run the Uncharted games, Sony can figure something out. They simply chose not to port the first 3 Uncharted games to PC, and I have no idea why. Sony has been severely mishandling their PC ports over the last month or so. It has nothing to do with the PC audience itself. The PC audience did not choose to skip the first 3 Uncharted games. The PC audience also did not choose to barely market a new release. But circling back to this tweet, the only thing damaging Sony's brand is their handling of these ports. Previous Sony ports have done excellently on PC. The lackluster sales only started when they stopped caring. I mean, even in the article that you're responding to in this very tweet, they acknowledge that Sony's PC ports are doing rather well on Steam. When you consider the fact that having more than 100,000 concurrent players puts you in the top 6 of the entire platform, these are some really impressive Steam numbers, which should just further drive home the point that Sony seriously fucked up Sackboy's chances for success over here. Most PlayStation games on PC have proven unpopular. This isn't surprising. Sometimes I really feel like I'm just taking pictures of drywall and putting them up on screen. I'm not going to repeat that giant tangent I just went on, but the TLDR is obviously no. PlayStation games have been doing very well on PC. Death Stranding's PC port basically revived that game's entire community, but this tweet right here is kind of just a piece of a larger issue when it comes to interpreting game sales and whatnot. The PlayStation is a very AAA heavy platform. Sony puts a lot of emphasis on their next big first-party release, and they really expect the PlayStation community to rally around all of their new games. The PC, on the other hand, has a much larger user base, far more games available, far more genres available, and no one company trying to get all of its users to buy a certain game just because. When your game options are limited and your platform is owned by a company that also publishes a chunk of your limited game options, it shouldn't be a surprise when those games don't do as hot on a platform where they aren't inherently held up on a pedestal. Now, some of those Sony games are genuinely solid products, but it seems like people who exclusively pay attention to Sony or Microsoft or even Nintendo have this skewed idea of what actually constitutes a financially successful game. When removed from Sony's built-in spotlight, Sackboy just wasn't a game that was going to generate its own hype. And when you mix that in with Sony's non-existent marketing of the PC version, you should have your answer as to why this one sold so much worse than the rest. JMW Boys responded, these games weren't popular on PS5 either though, which is accurate. Little Big Planet wasn't nearly a top tier PlayStation franchise. And then HVD responds, yes, Uncharted 4 wasn't popular on PlayStation LMAO. Now, I don't know if you're just being a twerp and intentionally missing the point here, but JMW is clearly referring to how Sackboy wasn't a big seller on PlayStation either, which is true. You can't really blame the PC community for not buying a game when your community didn't buy it either. And again, regarding Uncharted 4, I have no doubt in my mind that it would have sold exponentially better on PC if the first 3 games were available. In late 2015, Sony published the Nathan Drake collection. Whoa, how'd you come up with that title? And I'm still absolutely stumped as to why they didn't just port this to PC first. Not only would this fix the obvious continuity problem of Uncharted 4 coming to PC before everything else, but you would also get a boost in sales from the people who never played Uncharted before, and they wanted to start from the beginning. Plus, on top of that, you would have all the people who haven't played Uncharted since the PS3 days and want to try it again. Uncharted 4 came out on the PS4, so a lot of people will just inherently have played it more recently than they have played the first 3, which were on the PlayStation 3, which is really where Sony's missing out on potential PC sales. I truly do not understand why the Nathan Drake collection wasn't the first step when bringing this franchise to PC. Like, I don't understand this. It was unpopular on PS5, so PlayStation games on PC are failing. LOL, Uncharted Legacy of Thieves failed on PC. Sackboy Big Adventure on PC failing. Okay, again, Uncharted didn't fail on PC, it just didn't do as well as the rest of Sony's other ports. which shouldn't be surprising because it skipped the first 3 games in the series. Like, why is this hard to understand? Also, Uncharted launched right before what would become Steam's biggest weekend ever for concurrent players, according to Video Games Chronicle. Launching a PC port with minimal marketing right before some of the biggest launches of the year, and without porting the first 3 games of the series, should have been a giant red flag to Sony, but they just chugged right along and did it anyways. Honestly, I'm amazed Uncharted managed to sell as well as it did on PC despite all of the circumstances I just laid out. But it's like I said before, Uncharted could absolutely still pop off on PC once Sony wises up and releases the first 3 games. And also they don't put it face to face with fucking Call of Duty. Like, what were they expecting to happen? They should have put Little Big Planet 1, 2, 3. They literally can't. All Little Big Planet games currently can't be put on any non-Sony console. And they will probably only put the 3rd game because the servers of the other games are closed, but that will be in the future, a very, very, very distant future. What the fuck does servers being closed have to do with a fucking offline port? Yeah, that makes no sense. Little Big Planet 1 through 3 absolutely could have been ported to PC. It's like I said about the previous Uncharted games. If these games can be up and running on fan-made emulators, Sony absolutely could have figured something out. However, I'm not actually sure this matters as much because Sackboy is a standalone game, and it's marketed as such. It's like God of War 2018. The game is technically the 4th mainline God of War game, or at least I think it is, but it was marketed as its own standalone title because it essentially is. It's a series reboot that doesn't require any previous knowledge of the franchise, which is also partially why it sold so well on PC. The fact that God of War did so well on Steam should be all the evidence you need that Sackboy could have succeeded without the previous Little Big Planet games helping it out. When pirating plays a big role on PC, I'm not surprised. The absolute irony of saying this about a Little Big Planet game. You know, Little Big Planet? The PS3 franchise? You know the PS3. The console that partially survived off pre-owned game sales? You know pre-owned game sales, the thing that benefits the publisher the exact same amount as piracy? Which is not at all. This whole Sackboy fiasco is one of the dumbest instances of PlayStation fanboy salt I've ever seen. Look, Sony flubbed this one really hard. They released a $60 port of an unsuccessful game with no marketing in one of the busiest periods of the year for PC gaming. And yet these people are absolutely befuddled as to why it didn't perform well. So if you're trying to use Sackboy as evidence that PlayStation games should stop coming to PC or that we're not buying PlayStation ports over here, I point you towards literally every other PlayStation port that has sold excellently. Sackboy's underperformance is not a sign that PC gamers aren't buying PlayStation games. It's a sign that PlayStation needs to put more fucking effort in. This isn't the console marketplace. You can't just throw out an overpriced, underdeveloped port and expect us to eat it up. I know people get upset when I say this, but the PC gaming community generally has higher standards for games than the console community. This whole attitude of, don't market it, just shove it out on PC with a big price tag, and they'll buy it anyways. No, they won't, is the thing. We actually won't. When you do a decent port, and you price it fairly, we'll eat that shit up. Sackboy's failure is completely Sony's fault, and it is not evidence that Sony should stop releasing games on the platform. It is absolutely evidence that they need to get their head out of their ass and actually put some fucking effort in. Toodles. Down. Go.
Enemy here.
That's full 3 stacks. Full 3 stacks. I think the mag.
Nice. Going for res. They're outside going around.
30 seconds, rings close.
They're coming to help him.
Enemy down.
12 flash.
Knock one.
Good game, boys.
Easy. Good shit, man.